The Valley of the Kings, Egypt, February 16, 1923. A British excavation team, led by archaeologist Howard Carter, enters an underground ancient Egyptian burial chamber. Once inside, they break a protective seal that guards the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Carter lifts up a lamp and they look through and see that Tut is buried with more than 5,000 objects, gold and precious stones, more or less exactly in place as they'd been left more than 3,000 years ago. Of the thousands of artifacts found in King Tut's tomb, perhaps the most extraordinary is an exquisitely forged 13-inch iron dagger with a golden sheath, decorated with a chaste feather pattern. It was placed on the thigh of the king, unusually close to the very body of the king, so this is something very important. King Tut's reign was about 1330 BC. The dagger was a very important piece, a symbol that the gods handed him this power, and that's why it was buried with him for his journey to the afterlife. In the afterlife, King Tut assisted the sun god Ra, who every night traversed the underworld, a dark, watery place fraught with dangers and demons. King Tut would use this dagger to defend and fight off enemies. There was a belief that the blade had magical and spiritual powers. The Egyptians had essentially no ability in smelting iron at the time of Tutankhamun, so the iron from this dagger comes from elsewhere. They thought the only reasonable explanation for a perfectly worked iron dagger was that the iron itself was a gift directly from the gods. Recent scientific analysis shows the iron doesn't come from ore in the ground. It is meteoric iron from a meteorite landing on Earth from space. For Egyptians, the sky is where the gods were. Symbolically, that piece of iron was a gift from the gods. Some think the sacred nature of this relic was more than symbolic, pointing to mysterious deaths that followed the tomb's opening. Shortly after, Carter's team peered into the undiscovered tomb and saw loads of treasure. Carter's sponsor, the Earl of Carnarvon, died suddenly from a mysterious blood poisoning only 4 months after the tomb had been opened. On the bottom of our planet lies Antarctica, the coldest and most inhospitable continent, stretching over 5 million square miles, covered in ice sheets more than a mile deep. Today, the only inhabitants are scientists in research stations. In 2016, satellite images revealed a curious formation emerging from the ice that some researchers believe could be a man-made pyramid. They jut out of the ice and snow and look perfect, one with a perfectly square base, 2 kilometers in each direction. Is it possible our ancestors reached the Antarctic continent and perhaps even settled there? Geologists have long said Antarctica has been under ice for many millions of years. However, there is evidence it could have been free of ice in certain areas until perhaps 4000 BC. Polynesian peoples tell stories that describe a strange land with white rocks coming out of the water, icebergs, seals and penguins, an area we now know as Antarctica, the place of the ancestors. In 2017, German geologists collected core samples from the Antarctic seafloor and found more than 60 taxa of plants, similar to a rainforest, with temperatures like northern Italy. Finding that on the Antarctic continent was astonishing, because today no vegetation can survive under those conditions. The Antarctic continent and the secrets that still need to be recovered will tell us a lot about planet Earth. Cairo, Egypt. Atop a plateau west of the Nile is the Giza necropolis. The Sphinx is a single piece of stone cut from the natural rock of the Giza plateau. It stands 240 feet long, 66 feet tall, and 62 feet wide. For thousands of years, this massive statue was buried up to its neck in sand. There is a famous painting of Napoleon standing in front of it, still buried up to its shoulders. It wasn't until the 1920s that a team led by engineer Emile Barras unearthed the Sphinx and revealed the full sculpture, a watershed moment for understanding it. Archaeologists believe the Sphinx was sculpted around 2500 BC by King Khafra as part of his funerary complex. But a lot of scholars disagree. One important document is the Inventory Stela, a commemorative stone that records how Pharaoh Khufu repaired the Sphinx after it was struck by lightning. Significant, because Khufu came before Khafre. The inscription says the Sphinx is a much older structure that the Egyptians adopted, repaired, and venerated. Physical evidence also suggests great antiquity. The body of the Sphinx and the walls of its enclosure are weathered differently than everything else on the Giza plateau. The rest shows classic wind erosion, but on the Sphinx it is water weathering, rainfall, precipitation. That makes sense only in a much more temperate, rainy climate, perhaps back to the end of the last ice age, circa 10,000 BC, a ruin from pre-dynastic Egypt, the Valley of the Kings, Egypt.